It's Roll for Crit, and this is our review of Detective, a modern crime board game from Portal Games. In this game, you take on the roles of detectives in modern day, and you are trying to solve a case together cooperatively, whether you're by yourself or with a team of up to 5 players. And you're going to do so by looking through a series of cards. Each card has different text on it, and it will give you different leads, taking you to other cards that are numbered so you know what to go to next. And depending on how you progress through the case, you're going to try to find all the clues and solve the mystery overall.
There are 5 cases. You'll obviously start with 1, and you'll read sort of the introduction from this little case book, which will tell you some hints and clues. Throughout the game, you will be going through this deck, as you said, for certain cards. They'll have a front side, which will have a little description, a little story, and then you may possibly flip it over to the other side, maybe just for free, or maybe have to spend either authority tokens or these other tokens as well. You must decide then to flip it over. If not, it actually goes to this side where you're never allowed to look at the back, or this side where you're always allowed to refer to the front and back. So you have to choose wisely how to spend your resources.
Yeah, and you also have a little car here that represents where you are, because certain cards you can't go to if, for instance, you're at headquarters. You might need to go to the police department when you actually have to travel there. Now, for every action that you take, whether it's traveling or reading a card, it's going to cost you time. And you have this little time marker, so you start at 8 a.m. each day, generally, and it will move 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours to show how much time has passed. If you go into the red zone here in overtime, you're going to start accumulating stress markers, and if you get too many of those, the case could end, or they might just hurt your final score. So you want to really be efficient and make sure you're following the right leads, not just going down every crazy path that you find. There's also multiple days for each case, and usually the cases will have a limit, so you might only have 3 days to solve a case, for instance.
Yeah, it's like many of those other game shows like Mythos Tales or Sherlock Holmes. You have a sort of limit to compare yourself to, as well as sort of the end game quiz to see if you've actually solved the mystery. Where this actually sort of stands out a little bit there is you are not only scoring on just answering them right, but you actually have to gather evidence, because you got to prove that the people actually are guilty. So throughout the case, you'll actually be given either bios for people, as well as maybe fingerprints and DNA samples or soil samples, which you'll actually use a computer to put into a database, and you can sort of try to match them up. And you'll get rewarded for actually finding matching evidence.
Yeah, the database is a huge part of the game. You really are going to have a laptop or a tablet or a phone open constantly, so you can input people's names. Sometimes you will read files that are on there, input your DNA evidence, try to even match them with earlier DNA that you found. So it's not just enough to solve the case. You actually do have to find the evidence and make it work if you really want to get that full score, the best you can do.
Yeah, and as we said, this takes place in modern times. So this will actually refer to real life places and events, which some of them you're allowed to actually look up. And they'll have a little symbol for that. So, and that can matter, so you'll have to know a little bit more about the history of this place, or to be like, oh, if this place here, our case is also near there, that's maybe a clue. So that's another big detail. That's very interesting. These little yellow markers, by the way, are solely given to you just because it's like just a mark to remember that day 4 is, or as some things may happen, something happens as soon as you hit 12 o'clock.
Yeah, you're encouraged to take notes. You can draw diagrams, keep lists of where you've been, where you haven't been, little mind maps.
Yes, I was going to mention that. We played just like on the table of 5, though. I think we both regret not getting a cork board and get full string on for some of these mysteries.
Yeah, you can really go as far out as you want to go. There are 5 cases in the base box, and it is a campaign. So they all are connected to each other in terms of their story. So you really want to keep a consistent group for all the cases. You really can't be like, I want to play case 3 today. That's not the case. You got to play them in order. And once you play them, of course, for the most part, you know what happened. There's not too much replayability. Certainly you're not going to see every card in there. I think it's probably impossible to do that on your first playthrough. So you could go back for that. But in general, once you've solved the mystery, that's it. The game's over.
And going back to how you said that you can't just choose case 3. When you finish, let's for example, case 1, there are cards in there that will say, don't read this now, read it when you hit case 2, or maybe case 4, which is really cool because it's sort of like if you go sort of off the beaten track of this case, you'll find out more about the next case. Honestly, it's really one big case. And it's not as nearly as like this is a murder, this is a theft. I mean, they all tie together heavily.
It is really 5 episodes of one 5-season Netflix miniseries.
Yes.
We're huge fans of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. We love all these kinds of narrative games, solving a mystery cooperatively. I mean, it's straight up our alley. Plus, huge Portal Games fans. Designed by Ignacy Trzewiczek, great pedigree.
So, comparing to those, how do you feel?
How do I feel? Well, I feel pretty good for the most part. The things that I really like about this game, definitely the computer aspect. Having that database and entering evidence and DNA, I think is really cool. I also really like just basically the whole system as you do it. Traveling from place to place, it feels very realistic. If you need to, you're spending a token, but it does feel like, oh, I need to like really sweet talk this person or really go the extra mile to get the information that I need. And the way that you flip the cards, it does a great job. The thing this game does the best is immersing you in the case. I feel like more so than a lot of those other games, you really, really feel like, and I think maybe part of it is because it's in modern day, you really feel like you are detectives solving the case. At least that's what I felt. What did you think?
I do still really enjoy Mythos, Tales, and Detective.
Sure.
As we said, I think probably because it's really easy for just both of us to play without getting anyone else.
Yeah.
But what I really like is that compared to a lot of those other games, this one doesn't feel like, because even if you like both, going back to Sherlock Mythos, they're really sort of very similar just if you want more Sherlock or Cthulhu. Mm-hmm. This really, I felt like, stands out on its own. Like, as you said, the computer system obviously is a huge deal. I really do enjoy that. But I think one of the other big things was the way that because it's modern times, that's it. It's not, do you know Sherlock Holmes? Do you know Lovecraft stuff?
There's no ghosts, there's no ghouls.
So, as you said, you sort of become immersed and you recognize some names, not because they're super important, it's just like, oh yeah, that's the person who works at the PD office.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Not spoiling anything, being super vague, but one thing that's great is that each case, they have the same kind of core of the gameplay, but almost after the first 2, definitely 3, 4, and 5, put a very different spin on things. So you really feel like it's not just the same thing over and over again. It's only 5 cases, but they do kind of have a flip on it. So you kind of get a new experience.
I remember we hit a certain case and we're just like, oh, we're doing something very different now.
Yeah, when you get to case 3, you're like, oh, I'm ready for this adventure. This is going to be interesting. Yeah.
And I think now we should talk a bit more about the idea of, in essence, it's a one-time playthrough, you know everything. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's too much, because to me, it's like we just had a really fun movie.
Yeah.
And I think this game does deliver on that with so many fun mechanics and puzzle solving.
Yeah, no, I agree. I personally have no issue. If you're buying this, you know what you're getting. Once you play it, it's over unless you forget the details. But like you said, same thing as seeing a movie, reading a book. You can relive it, you can replay it if you want to, but that experience for me is worth the price of admission by itself. Considering you might spend like $50 in real life to go to a theme park or an escape room, or all these things you can't repeat in any way. And I think there's this expectation on board games that you should be able to replay it forever. And if that's how you feel, then don't buy the game. But I think that this is a fair
For me, if you're a game that is a one-time playthrough, there are certain conditions then. Let's see if Detective meets them. One, if you have a really good story. I think Detective absolutely crushes that. 2, could you possibly give it to a friend afterwards so then they can play and then afterwards you can discuss like what they did in their story? Detective definitely meets that. I think all the pieces can easily be put back in place. You don't have to destroy anything or do anything for that. So that's a great thing. 3, is the system fun? And it absolutely was fun going from card and making decisions. I think you get your money's worth still, as you said. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like that, like one-off things, you feel like it has to be replayable, then I don't think it doesn't matter.
Why are you watching this? Yeah. Probably my biggest criticism of the game, and I don't know how you feel about this, but in terms of the mechanics are really solid. The story itself, I really liked the plot. I thought the mystery was actually pretty compelling and well connected, and the way that the clues are dropped was well done. But the text itself, the prose, the way it is written, a lot of times can be pretty dry, I thought. A lot of it has the aspects of military ranks, and that's a big theme in a lot of the cases. And sometimes, you're going through and you have to remember real people's names. Maybe it's because it's, we're again comparing it to Sherlock. It's all modern day, it's all very real, and sure, there's murders and crazy things, but a lot of the text didn't really grab me from a flavor style. And I don't know that, for instance, a lot of these games I would enjoy as a solo game. This one I felt I really found more fun in discussing with you, what should we do, how do we dissect these clues, whereas I don't feel like the cards for me were enough of just a fun story, a ride I wanted to go on by myself.
I go to grab a coffee while I wait 30 minutes. I'm like, that's what you do.
There are a lot of passages that are like, you enter the station, the computers are down, you have to wait a while, something boring is happening. Like, they go through all the bureaucracy, which I think is a double-edged sword because, like I said, it does make you really feel like you're really a detective, but not always is that fun.
Also, because most of the time when we're passing the time, food is not likely the way we're going to do it. Hope you enjoy salads.
Yeah, and coffee. A lot of coffee references going on in Detective. I will say the thing about what you're allowed to look up online with the Wi-Fi symbols is a really cool idea and concept. Sometimes I felt like it didn't quite live up to the promise where I felt like, oh, if you know about this thing in real life, it might help you. It's more like, here's a thing that's kind of neat just to get some backstory. But it's kind of hard. What could they can't sell a game that requires you to have knowledge about something. You could, but it's harder to make. That's one other thing. But by and large, it's if you like these kinds of games, you like solving mysteries, and especially if you have a good group. We played it with the two of us. I don't know. Certainly, it'd be nice to have more of these powers available with a larger group.
Well, we actually discussed how certain powers would be better or worse depending on the size of your group.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. Sometimes your mileage may vary if it's harder to have your discussions that way. If people talk over each other, deciding what to do. Between the two of us, it's hard to decide agree on what to do. So I feel like with a larger group that could be even harder. But it's definitely it lives up to the promise of the title. It is a detective modern crime board game. For sure. Crits and misses for Detective. Crits. The story is incredibly immersive as each case is tied together. You really get the sense that you're solving an overarching plot line like detectives in a TV show or even in real life.
You especially see that how certain cards will reward you by going off the beaten track with special evidence or information for future cases, letting you really feel excited to help out and find out what did you discover later on.
Integration with the computer database through their website, as well as matching evidence with other types of DNA that you found along the way, really makes the game feel unique and stand out from others in the genre. The game doesn't hold your hand with a limited amount of time and a limited amount of choices that you can make. It's really on you as the players to discuss and make choices and put the clues together to solve the case.
At the end, when you'll be answering questions, you actually will lose points for getting it wrong. But if you're really not sure, they do have a I don't know, which is sort of a you don't gain any points but don't lose any points, which is sort of an interesting twist. Now let's pull up our file for the misses for Detective. It is sort of a one-time play game. If you really want something that can play multiple times over and over, this probably isn't the game for you. Overall, we did really enjoy the story, but we did find some of the cards to be a bit dry.
Descriptions of what you're doing and where you're going are realistic, but not always super fun.
The special Wi-Fi lookup symbol was a cool idea, but we really didn't feel like it was utilized in the best way.
It's a nice extra layer on top of the rest of the game, but I think it would have been cooler if they went ahead and dove into that mechanic in a deeper way.
We put our nose to the grindstone and came out satisfied that we solved the case of the Golden Watch. If you want to find out what that means, you'll have to buy Detective for yourself.
It really was a pretty cool journey, in spite of little quibbles with the writing style of the game, the way everything comes together, the fun it provides, it's super satisfying. And, the fact that we played through all 5 cases and didn't regret doing it, we looked forward to it and had fun doing it, says a lot. There's a lot of games that aren't one-time only plays that we don't play more than 5 times. So the fact fact that we got that much time out of it, for me, is definitely a victory. And I'm excited for more stuff in the future.
Yeah, we should have mentioned that each case isn't like a 5-minute thing. They are significant. Each one has its own time.
Yeah, they're around
real time in addition to its.
They're around 3 hours each. So, and that's, not allowing for the time you spend talking about it and arguing about it.
Or indecisive. Yes, and as we said before, we do want to iterate that this does feel like it can stand alongside those other one-time mystery games without feeling just like another clone of them, which is a great addition if you're like, I get it, this is the same style.
Yeah. So if you like that, definitely it's worth taking a look into Detective from Portal Games. Let us know in the comments if you've played it. Definitely keep it spoiler-free, but if you have a favorite particular case that you liked, or maybe you want to say if you figured out the solution to the mystery early on, or if you were totally stumped by the end. We didn't fail any of the cases, which is surprising.
Except for the case 0. The promo case.
Yeah, there's a promo case which you might be able to find online still. I'm not sure, but yeah, we did fail that one. That was our first time. So let us know all that stuff. If you have any other suggestions or thoughts for future episodes. That was our detective review. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this is Roll for Crit.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more board game content. Every little bit helps.
Please, we gotta eat.